Jessica tightened her grip on her bag as she stormed through the lobby of the corporate building. The air felt thick with tension, and she had just had enough. Today was one of those days where everything seemed to go wrong. A frustrating meeting, missed deadlines, and now this. With each step, her frustration simmered just under the surface. She spotted him, Eric. He was leaning casually against the wall, chatting with a few of their colleagues, a smile on his face as if the world was just right. But in that moment, Jessica couldn't see the world as anything but unfair. She called out, her voice sharper than she intended. He turned, his smile fading slightly. "Hey, Jess." Something in his tone ignited her irritation further, like he didn't really care. "What's wrong? You want to know what's wrong? You were supposed to handle the client pitch today. You left me to explain our budget cuts all alone." The lobby grew quiet as their colleagues turned to watch. Jessica's heart raced, not only from anger but from embarrassment. Eric's expression shifted to surprise and then to something else, defensiveness maybe. He opened his mouth but nothing came out at first. "Jessica, that's not fair," he finally replied, his voice low and steady. "I had to prioritize the presentation." She interrupted, throwing her hands up. "I'm tired of covering for you and your priorities." The words hung between them, sharp and heavy. The silence felt like a spotlight, illuminating not just their argument but the deeper feelings Jessica had kept hidden. Frustration boiled over into something more. She wasn't just mad at Eric, she was mad at the entire situation, the unfairness of it all. With that, Jessica turned and walked away, her heart racing. She didn't look back, not wanting to see his face or the judgment of their coworkers. She got into the elevator, the doors sliding closed as if separating her from those moments of tension. She pressed the button for her floor and leaned against the wall, trying to calm down. As the elevator moved, Jessica took a deep breath, forcing herself to think of something else. She considered all the new projects she was juggling. She had already been stretched thin, and this felt like the last straw. It was exhausting, and Eric's carelessness was the tipping point. When she finally reached her floor, Jessica stepped out and walked to her desk, determined to focus on her work. But her mind kept wandering back to the lobby. Was she too hard on Eric? Maybe she could have expressed her frustrations differently. But the truth was, she didn't feel like she had time for soft words. It was a dog-eat-dog world at their company, and she felt like she was constantly fighting to prove herself. Hours passed, the sun beginning to set, casting an orange glow through the windows. Jessica wasn't even aware of time slipping away until she glanced up and noticed it was getting late. She had missed lunch, and now her stomach grumbled. As she stood to stretch, she heard murmurs in the conference room down the hall. Curiosity got the better of her, and she peeked in, discovering the board meeting in full swing. The long black table was bordered by stern faces, serious and focused, and there at the head of the table was Eric, calm, collected, and delivering a presentation. She thought, confused as a wave of emotions hit her all at once. This man, who she had just angrily shouted at in the lobby, was impressing the top executives. He moved with confidence, his gestures grand and compelling. This was someone else, someone she hadn't seen before. The more she watched, the more fascinated she became. Eric had a way of commanding the room that was hard to ignore. He wasn't just presenting numbers, he was weaving a story, making those numbers come to life. He spoke about the company's future plans, his enthusiasm contagious. The board nodded, approving expressions on their faces, the same people who would usually scrutinize every detail. Jessica felt a flicker of realization. She knew Eric was capable, but in that moment she understood the depths of his potential. Her anger began shifting. Maybe she had been too quick to judge. She had seen him in the trenches during tough times, where he sometimes fell short. But now here he was, thriving and delivering results when it mattered most. As the meeting wrapped up, Jessica quietly left her spot to get back to her desk. She needed to process everything she had just witnessed. She felt a mix of pride and confusion, battling emotions swirling inside her. Once at her desk, her mind wouldn't stop racing. The image of Eric leading in the conference room replayed in her thoughts, and she couldn't shake it. Minutes later, when the meeting ended and the board members filed out, Jessica caught Eric's eye. He approached her, a look of uncertainty crossing his face. "Jess," he said softly, "about earlier, I want to apologize." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. I was frustrated." "I get that," he replied, running a hand through his hair. "I should have communicated better. I just thought I could handle the presentation, and I was wrong for not looping you in." She watched him, the man who had once felt like a rival. Now he seemed more like someone who could be a partner. "I appreciate that, Eric. I do think you're doing a good job." The presentation was. A hint of a smile broke through for both of them, a tentative truce. They stood awkwardly for a moment, each trying to navigate this new territory. Eric suggested, clearly looking for a way to mend things. "I'd like that," Jessica replied, a warmth spreading in her chest. The earlier tension melted away, replaced by a sense of hope. It dawned on her that they didn't have to compete. They could work as a team, respecting each other's strengths. In the following weeks, Jessica and Eric found a rhythm. They began collaborating closely on projects, sharing ideas and supporting each other. Jessica realized Eric had a clarity when it came to presentations. He could break down complex ideas into simple, compelling narratives. She learned a lot from him, while he in turn valued her attention to detail and her ability to keep projects on track. Over time, their working relationship deepened into a genuine friendship. They enjoyed spending time together over coffee, discussing everything from work strategies to their lives outside the office. One day, as they sat on a bench outside during lunch, Eric looked over at her. "I've thought about that day in the lobby." Jessica nodded, recalling how that confrontation had led to their newfound partnership. "Yeah, it's funny how those moments can reveal so much about us." He chuckled. "And I saw how passionate you are about your work. I admire that, Jess." Jessica felt warmth fill her heart at the unexpected compliment. "Thanks, Eric. I think we balance each other well." As days faded into weeks, their bond only strengthened. They became known as a dynamic duo, often praised in meetings and by higher-ups. The same executives who had once silently watched Eric's presentation were now taking both of them seriously. They learned to trust one another's instincts, turning collaboration into their strongest asset. The struggle in the lobby had been the catalyst for change. Jessica came to appreciate that confrontation doesn't always lead to division. Sometimes, when backed against the wall, you can choose to extend a hand instead of throwing stones. 6 months later, Jessica was walking through the lobby again. Her phone buzzed and she checked it, distracted. Suddenly, she bumped into someone. "Whoa," she exclaimed, looking up to find Eric grinning. "Can't look at your phone if you want to avoid collisions," he teased. She chuckled. "Fair point." As they walked side by side toward the elevator, Jessica felt grateful. The past was behind them. They had transformed not just their work lives, but also built a lasting friendship through their struggles. Sometimes, a single moment of frustration can change everything. It can ignite understanding and lead to growth. Jessica had learned that from her time with Eric, and it was the beginning of a new chapter for them both. The whispers floated through the air as Jessica turned on her heel in the lobby, frustration bubbling inside her. Just moments ago, she had confronted Eric, her colleague, with a firestorm of emotions. His casual demeanor had ticked her off, and she'd lost her cool right in front of their coworkers. She had snapped, her voice echoing off the sleek marble walls. As her words hung in the air, the reactions were immediate. Colleagues froze mid-conversation, gazes darting back and forth between her and Eric. His smile vanished, replaced with a puzzled expression that morphed into a tight-lipped frown. "Look, Jess," he replied softly, shaking his head. The defensiveness in his tone only fueled her anger. She didn't care that a few administration staff were quietly watching. "You thought wrong." The words rolled off her tongue sharper than she intended. With everyone's eyes on them, the tension was palpable, igniting in Jessica an embarrassment that only made her rage grow. Without waiting for a reply, she turned and stormed away, her heart pounding. As the elevator doors slid shut behind her, she leaned against the metal wall, her breath coming fast. What had she just done? She couldn't shake the feeling that she'd crossed a line, but at the moment felt justified. The rest of her day was a blur. She tried to focus on her projects, but her mind kept drifting back to the confrontation in the lobby. She replayed the scene over and over, the taste of fury still bitter on her tongue. She had been pushed too far, and today had just been the final straw. As dusk settled over the city, Jessica caught her breath and decided to leave. She walked towards the exit, steeling herself as she passed the conference room where, through the glass wall, she saw a gathering. The board meeting was starting. Her heart skipped a beat when she spotted Eric at the head of the table, commanding attention, speaking confidently. She whispered to herself, shocked. Just hours ago, he had seemed so laid back, almost careless. Now he was transformed. His words flowed easily, and the room hung on his every sentence. He gestured with conviction, painting a picture of growth and opportunity, the future of the company pulsating through his speech. An invisible weight settled on Jessica's chest. Watching him lead the meeting, she realized how drastically she had misjudged him. It was clear he was good at what he did. Dirty dishes in the office kitchen or late emails didn't define his worth. She had seen only part of him in those moments of tension. As the meeting continued, Jessica felt the stirrings of regret deep within her. The moment she had snapped, she had let her frustration blind her to Eric's capabilities. She had let her anger obscure the truth. He was more than just a colleague she sometimes butted heads with. He was a leader. After the meeting, she gingerly walked back to her desk, the sound of her heels echoing as she maneuvered through the corridor. The feelings inside her swirled between guilt and admiration. Was she really responsible for that sudden outburst, or was it just her pressing reality of feeling drained and alone in a demanding environment? The days drifted by, and Jessica tried to put the incident behind her. She kept catching glimpses of Eric in the break room, or sometimes walking in on him brainstorming with others. He was effective, popular, he handled pressure with grace. Each day at work, the embarrassment gnawed at her. She considered reaching out, but pride kept her silent. As much as she wanted to mend things, she feared being rejected. She thought. Weeks passed, and somehow fate had inserted them into the same task force, which felt like a ticking clock. Great, just what I need, Jessica muttered to herself as she learned they would collaborate on an upcoming project. The two were thrust together in brainstorming sessions where Jessica had to stifle any residual resentment. Each time Eric spoke, she fought the urge to rehash their last interaction. If anything, listening to him opened her eyes wider. In the next few meetings, Eric made an effort to reach out to her. "Hey Jessica," he said one day, breaking the ice after they received an unexpected challenge from their manager. His tone was vulnerable. A lump formed in Jessica's throat, but somehow she felt the courage she needed. "I've been meaning to talk to you about that," she admitted. "I was really out of line in the lobby." Eric's expression shifted, a sigh of relief washing over his face. "I appreciate you saying that. I was caught off guard myself." Their honesty opened the door to a different kind of communication. No longer defensive, they shared ideas, and with each passing day, the tension began to dissolve like sugar in warm tea. Jessica realized she had underestimated him before. There was a collaborative spark in their conversations that hadn't existed before. As they worked late nights together, their laughter filled the room, creating a newfound camaraderie. Slowly, Eric started to blend in Jessica's ideas, and he valued her attention to detail. "Honestly, your insights are spot on," he would say, animatedly sharing feedback, his voice gliding with enthusiasm. It felt surreal. The woman who once yelled at him now found herself cheering him on in meetings. They complimented each other, seamlessly bouncing thoughts back and forth like they had been a team for years. When the project made a breakthrough, it felt like a triumph they both shared. Stress faded, frustrations vanished, and respect flourished. Their synergy transformed the team's dynamic, goals were achieved, and the company was thriving. But as they connected, Jessica began to recognize a deeper fear lurking within her. Would this shift affect their friendship? What if an intensity built again? One particular late night, after weeks of solid teamwork, Eric turned to Jessica, his brow furrowed slightly. "I really appreciate everything we've accomplished together, you know." For a moment, a silence hung in the air, thick with unspoken emotions. Jessica thought of the fiery confrontation from weeks before. "Me too, Eric. I didn't think we could turn it around like this." Suddenly, he looked straight into her eyes, a warmth sparking in the depths. "I know we had a rough start, but maybe it was meant to happen." An undefined energy shifted between them, leaving a lingering, unacknowledged connection. They laughed again, the tension replaced by an exhilarating bond of newfound understanding. Yet as days went by, Jessica often found herself lost in the thoughts of their friendship. Was it something more? Was it just her mind playing tricks after that unexpected spark? She sometimes caught Eric peeking at her across the conference table while sharing an idea with colleagues. There was a hint of a shared smile, a camaraderie that felt different, somehow intimate. One evening, their team had wrapped up a successful presentation for the board, and people erupted with cheers of congratulations. Jessica felt a rush of pride as she witnessed Eric give an inspired speech to the executives. That day, he seemed to shine brighter than ever. She caught him later in the office, the aftermath of success floating in the air. He said, his eyes sparkling with gratitude. "Yeah, we really did," she echoed, claiming the victory that had led them here. It felt monumental, not just for their careers, but for the friendship that had wrinkled and reshaped itself into something both familiar and exhilarating. Underneath their professional aura, Jessica could sense another layer, a connection that had transcended each difficult moment. As the weeks melted into months, they both found themselves involved in a series of projects together, delighting in each other's company. The lobby argument had ignited a flame of respect that transformed into an alliance sharing laughter and ambitions. One afternoon, as they exited the building together, Jessica saw a glimpse of that earlier scene play out in her mind, a stark reminder of that moment when she had believed she had pushed Eric away forever. Now standing beside him felt natural, almost destined. She mused, a playful smirk twisting her lips. Eric chuckled, shaking his head. "I'd have thought we'd never get here, but I think that moment, that confrontation, sparked this connection." As they walked into the sunset, counting their accomplishments, Jessica felt the weight of her past fade. They continued down the path, two people who had once been at odds now colleagues and friends, learning that sometimes the road to connection begins with an unexpected confrontation. In the glow of the evening light, she realized how far they had come from that day in the lobby. The fear had turned to respect, and frustration had blossomed into friendship. And sometimes, just sometimes, the conflict you least expect can lead to the partnership you never knew you needed. In the bustling lobby of a high-rise corporate building, Jessica's heart raced as she approached Eric, the usually relaxed guy from finance. Today, he leaned against the polished marble wall, chatting with a few colleagues. She could see the camaraderie, the laughter swirling around him, but all she felt was fury simmering beneath the surface. It was as if the world around her faded away. She marched straight up to him and shouted, "Why didn't you tell me about the changes to the proposal?" Her voice cascaded over the room like a clap of thunder, causing heads to turn. Eric blinked, visibly thrown off guard. "Jess, I thought you were aware." His words tumbled out, but for Jessica, they felt like an excuse. "You thought wrong," she snapped, her hands clenching at her sides. "I'm tired of holding the bag every time you drop a ball." A hush enveloped the lobby. Colleagues exchanged glances, trying not to look too intrigued, but unable to resist the magnetic pull of their confrontation. Eric's eyebrows drew together and his smile faded, leaving an expression of frustration on his face. "Seriously," he responded, trying to maintain his composure, but the tension in his voice betrayed him. Jessica felt the heat rise to her cheeks, but she pressed on. The moment felt electric but heavy, the weight of unspoken truths lurking beneath her words. She turned abruptly, storming towards the elevator, dragging her anger with her. The doors closed with a whoosh, but she didn't look back. Inside the small metal box, she took deep breaths, grappling with the intensity of what had just happened. She quickly replayed the confrontation in her mind. Why did she let her frustration boil over? It felt justified in the moment, but now, as the elevator moved, she wondered if she had crossed a line. As the floors glided by, she tried to focus on her work for the rest of the day, keeping her head down at her desk. But the pit in her stomach wouldn't relent. Just hours ago, she had felt powerful, confronting one of her colleagues. Now she felt small, haunted by the memory of their argument. Later, as the clock struck 6 and the office began to empty, she noticed murmurs coming from the conference room down the hall. Peering in through the glass doors, she was nearly knocked breathless. There he was, Eric, at the head of the table, confidently presenting to the board. The same man she had just yelled at was now commanding attention with ease. Jessica felt a rush of emotions. In that moment, it became clear to her how drastically she had misjudged him. This man was not just another colleague, he was a leader. His hands gestured animatedly as he spoke about the company's future, painting a picture of growth and innovation. She couldn't help but admire the smoothness of his delivery, the passion in his voice, and the way the board members hung onto every word. She was struck by an understanding. Eric wasn't just a guy who dropped the ball. He was balancing a complex array of responsibilities that she hadn't fully acknowledged. It was like a light bulb flickered on in her mind. Maybe she had been wrong to see him in such a narrow light. Maybe she had let her frustrations cloud her judgment. As the meeting wrapped up, Jessica quietly slipped back to her desk, the echo of Eric's voice still ringing in her ears. For the rest of the night, she fought with the emotions churning inside her. She felt guilt creeping in for what she had said, and respect blossoming for what she had seen. It was all too complicated to unravel. Days turned into weeks, and Jessica worked hard to push the incident from her mind. But no matter how hard she tried, she kept an eye on Eric. He was often seen across the office, collaborating with others, leading meetings, and obviously gaining respect from supervisors. And with every moment that passed, Jessica realized that perhaps there was more to Eric than she initially believed. One rainy afternoon, the two were assigned to collaborate on a project. Jessica's stomach twisted at the thought of working closely with him after their confrontation. What if he still held resentment? What if the tension flared up again? They met in the small conference room, and for a second, awkward silence hung between them, thick and uncomfortable. Jessica cleared her throat. "So, I'm glad we're working together on this," she said, forcing a smile. Eric met her gaze, and she saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "Yeah, me too." As they dove into their work, something shifted. The more they hashed out ideas, the more they found common ground. Jessica couldn't deny that Eric had a knack for organizing complex thoughts into something manageable. It was the clarity he brought to the project that began to chip away at her previous frustration. "I know I didn't handle things well before," she admitted one afternoon, her voice low. Eric shrugged, but there was no judgment in his face. "We all have those moments. I could have communicated better, too." This new depth between them felt refreshing. Slowly, the walls began to crumble. They exchanged jokes, shared personal stories, and began laughing together. The sense of camaraderie grew, replacing their earlier tension with something more profound. Their collaborative sessions became something they both looked forward to. Jessica discovered that Eric was not just capable, he inspired her. He had a relentless drive that pulled her out of her own bubble, urging her to be the best version of herself at work. One late evening, as they prepared for a presentation to the management team, Eric turned to her, his eyes bright. "You know, you've helped me see things differently on this project." Jessica felt her heart leap, exhilarated by the compliment. "Thanks, Eric," he chuckled, shaking his head. As they stood side by side, ready to present to their superiors, Jessica felt a rush of gratitude wash over her. She had confronted someone who seemed distant and closed off, and that confrontation had unlocked so much potential. After the presentation, the management team praised their work. They had combined their strengths, Jessica's attention to detail and Eric's narrative skills. It felt like a triumphant echo of their earlier friction, now transformed into something remarkable. One afternoon, as they took a break, Jessica leaned against the wall and casually asked, "So, what's next for you?" Eric frowned thoughtfully. "Well, I've been considering a few paths, but honestly, this project made me realize how much I enjoy leading teams." "That's great, you absolutely shone in that meeting," she said, her admiration showing. Then something shifted in the way he looked at her. "You know," he began, hesitating as if weighing his words. "I think our initial confrontation was a blessing in disguise." She nodded, remembering the tension, how it had felt at the time. "Exactly," he said, a smile breaking on his face. As they chatted, a new layer of connection blossomed between them. There was more than friends territory building beneath their playful banter, an understanding that had forged a bond stronger than both had anticipated. Weeks passed by, and one day after work, Eric suggested grabbing dinner to celebrate their project's success. Jessica felt her heart race. Why was she so excited? Why did the thought of spending time with him outside of work feel so exhilarating? "Yeah, I'd love that," she replied, her voice steady, although her heart fluttered in her chest. As they shared plates of pasta, laughter filled the air between them. Jessica found herself opening up, sharing her hopes, fears, and dreams. And the way Eric listened, his undivided attention captivating, made her feel seen in ways she hadn't felt before. "I never thought we'd get to this point," she confessed, twirling her fork. "Life is funny that way," Eric responded, his eyes intent on hers. "Sometimes the most uncomfortable moments lead to the best outcomes." That night, something vital shifted. Jessica could feel the tremors of a bond that transcended work, and despite her uncertainties, she was ready to embrace whatever might come next. Not long after their dinner, the organization announced a significant restructuring, and suddenly, Eric found himself leading the board meeting yet again. Jessica watched from the back, her heart swelling with pride as he commanded the room with confidence. Their hard work paid off, but beyond the applause of executives, there loomed the promise of a future together that felt like possibility and hope. After the meeting, they ended up alone in the hallway, the echo of applause still ringing in their ears. Jessica turned to Eric, a joyful spark in her heart. "Thanks, but I couldn't have done it without your help," he replied, his smile infectious. In that moment, something unspoken shifted between them once more. Their connection glimmered with potential, a beautiful mixture of admiration and heartfelt understanding. She stepped closer, searching for words, but they hung in the air, alive with possibility. She started, her voice softer. Before she could finish, he took a breath, his gaze steady. "Jess, I know we went through some rough patches, but honestly," the electric chemistry wrapped around them, and Jessica felt all her fears dissipate. "Good," he said, stepping even closer. The air thickened, and she sensed they were on the brink of something monumental. Here they stood, the two of them, once at odds and now intertwined through collaboration, understanding, and dimension that neither had anticipated. In that moment, she realized sometimes confrontation isn't the end, it's the beginning. That day in the lobby forever altered their course, and the resolve and respect they had built paved the way for new horizons. Together, they could embrace what lay ahead, and with one final shared smile, they turned and walked forward into an uncertain future, hopeful and ready to explore the bond they had created. "Why didn't you send me the updates?" Jessica shouted, her voice echoing through the glass walls of the lobby. The sleek marble floor seemed to absorb the words before sending them back like shockwaves. Eric froze, taken aback by the ferocity of her outburst. He was casually leaning against the reception desk, sipping his coffee, but that moment shattered the calm. He replied, confusion spreading across his face. This wasn't the relaxed conversation he expected. Jessica's heart raced. Maybe it was the stress of the week, the looming deadlines, or the clients breathing down her neck, but as she watched Eric's carefree demeanor, it ignited something in her. "I'm talking about the presentation this morning." Their colleagues turned to eavesdrop, captivated by the sudden drama unfolding. The lobby that had once felt welcoming now turned hostile. Eric shifted uncomfortably, searching for words. "Jessica, I didn't think it'd be a problem. I was focused on the numbers." She felt heat rush to her cheeks, anger surging like a tide. "You thought wrong." The tension layered between them, thick and suffocating. Eric's expression hardened, frustration mingling with disbelief. "Maybe I didn't need to." She couldn't help but yell back, knowing that regret would settle in later, but right now she just needed him to understand. With a final glare, she spun on her heel and marched away, each step echoing her discontent. The elevator doors slid shut with a cold, mechanical thud, cutting her off from the scene behind her. As she descended to her floor, her mind raced. Was she out of line? Maybe, but the weight of her responsibilities felt heavier than ever. Arriving at her desk, she buried herself in work, trying to drown out the harsh words that still reverberated in her mind. She was the type who felt every emotion deeply infuriatingly so. The more she tried to focus, the more her thoughts drifted back to Eric, the way he had stood there, arms crossed, that hint of disbelief in his eyes. Hours later, she caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of her eye. She turned her head just in time to see him leading a meeting in the boardroom. The shift was dramatic. This was not the same man she had just fought with in the lobby. He stood confidently, projecting an energy that commanded attention. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice steady. The board members leaned in, captivated by the presentation unfolding before them. Jessica's heart dropped as she realized this was the same man she had just torn into. Watching him command the room like this filled her with a mix of admiration and disbelief. As he confidently discussed strategies for expansion, Jessica felt a wave of clarity wash over her. He had seen only one dimension of Eric, the flustered colleague who had bypassed her in a meeting. Now he was a force to be reckoned with, laying out ideas that sparked excitement in others. The meeting wrapped up and Jessica turned away, unable to shake her feelings of regret. It was as if the confrontation had laid bare the fractures in their professional relationship. She had misjudged him. There was a depth to Eric that she hadn't recognized, and it left her feeling utterly foolish. Days turned into weeks. She tried to let the incident fade into the background. Eric seemed unfazed, moving confidently through the office, leading projects and impressing their higher-ups. Jessica sat at her desk in quiet admiration, grappling with her own feelings of inadequacy. Yet she couldn't ignore the moments when they passed each other in the hallways. There was an unspoken tension, a heaviness that lingered. She regretted their argument more with each passing day. What could she say to make things right? One afternoon, they were both assigned to work on a critical project together. The thought sent an electric shock through her. Would they be able to collaborate after everything? As she entered the small conference room where they'd be brainstorming ideas, the air felt thick with uncertainty. "Hey Jess," Eric greeted her, a hint of hesitance in his voice. Jessica forced a smile, but inside she struggled to keep her heart from racing. They began to work through the project, exchanging ideas and suggestions. To her surprise, Eric's input was sharp, insightful. Maybe she had been too quick to judge him. This wasn't the man who had let her down, this was someone serious about their work. Remembering the incident in the lobby, Jessica found a surge of courage. "Eric," she began, "can we talk about what happened the other day?" He paused, then nodded. "Sure." As they spoke, the atmosphere shifted. The walls of defensiveness began to crumble. Eric admitted that he had underestimated how much work Jess managed, while she owned up to her temper and frustration. It was liberating to lay it all out. "I guess we both learned from that," she said, feeling lighter. "Absolutely," he agreed, a smile creeping onto his face. The project brought them closer, revealing strengths they both wielded. Their collaboration blossomed, punctuated by laughter and shared successes. Each breakthrough felt not just like a victory in the workplace, but a step toward a friendship that neither had expected. The days unfolded into a beautiful rhythm. The frustration of that day in the lobby faded to the background as they laughed together and bounced ideas back and forth. Jessica realized that Eric wasn't just a colleague, he was someone she valued. One lunch break, as they shared sandwiches, Jessica couldn't help but be candid. "You know, I think we make a really good team." Eric's eyes met hers, and the sincerity in them melted away any remaining tension. "I feel the same way." After that, things shifted. They navigated through challenging projects with ease, seamlessly bringing their respective skills together. Jessica found herself inspired by the way Eric approached challenges, almost effortlessly navigating obstacles like a seasoned pro. Then came the day of their big presentation to the senior management team. They prepped for hours, nerves buzzing like electricity in the air. When they entered the boardroom, it felt like time slowed. As the executives settled in, Jessica caught a glimpse of Eric, adjusting his tie, his confidence radiating. With their ideas laid out, the presentation flowed naturally. Eric led the discussion while Jessica supported him, firing off important details when necessary. Together, they painted a picture of success, creativity dancing from one to the other like a well-rehearsed duet. Afterward, as the executives praised their innovative approach, Jessica felt a swell of pride. She had contributed to something meaningful, something that had the potential to move the company forward. Their hard work culminated in applause, and Jessica realized how far they'd come. Later, as they left the boardroom, Eric turned to her beaming. "We did it," she laughed, feeling the adrenaline coursing through her veins. In that moment, standing together, Jessica felt a connection that transcended mere professionalism. They had a bond forged through trust and respect, a friendship that had blossomed from adversity. Eric suggested, his eyes glimmering. The offer sent her heart fluttering. She replied, unable to hide her excitement. They arrived at a cozy Italian restaurant, the ambience warm and inviting. As they ate, laughter filled the air, effortlessly weaving familiar threads between them. Jessica unlocked her thoughts, revealing hopes and dreams she hadn't shared before. "I never thought I'd enjoy working with you this much," she admitted, her voice light with sincerity. Eric chuckled, a hint of playfulness in his gaze. "Likewise, sometimes things don't unfold as expected." The question lingered in the air. It was then Jessica understood the deeper lesson. Confrontation in all its messy glory had opened the door to something extraordinary. They would have missed out on this incredible dynamic. "And look at us now," she said, her heart racing. Their eyes locked, and for a fleeting moment, everything else melted away. As they returned to their conversations, a different kind of energy sparked between them, something inexplicable, an undercurrent that hinted that there might be more than just friendship. Walking back to their cars later that evening, the world around them felt alive with possibility. The night sky twinkled above, reflecting the feelings brewing within them. Jessica's emotions tangled together, aflame with anticipation. Each shared moment created a deeper connection. "I really enjoy spending time with you, Jess," Eric said, suddenly serious. "You bring something unique to the table." Jessica's heart raced as she met his gaze, uncertainty and excitement swirling inside her. "I feel the same way," she murmured, trying to catch her breath. As the silence enveloped them, she sensed that their relationship was teetering on the edge of revelation. "If you'd have told me a few months ago that we'd be here right now, I wouldn't have believed it," he continued, his voice steady. "Neither would I," she replied softly, uncertainty mingling with hope. For a brief moment, they stood there under the stars, the weight of the past falling away, illuminating the future. A future shaped by trust, respect, and an unforeseen possibility. In that fleeting moment, they both felt it, a kind of pull, a connection that hinted at something more. It was the sweet realization that sometimes the friction you encounter can lead to a path of deeper understanding, shared experiences, and even unexpected feelings. As they drove home, the warmth of their newfound friendship wrapped around them like a comforting blanket, embracing all the potential ahead. They had transformed from adversaries into allies, and now, perhaps, something even deeper was beginning to bloom. With every turn of the road and every beat of their hearts, they realized they were not just moving forward in their careers, they were unearthing a connection that neither had anticipated. The journey that started with a yell had evolved into something beautifully intricate, and the adventure was just beginning. "Why didn't you send me the updates?" Jessica's voice sliced through the lobby like a knife, drawing the curious stares of her coworkers. Eric, caught mid-sip of his coffee, looked up, bewildered. The normally serene atmosphere of the corporate building was suddenly charged with the tension of a brewing storm. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest as the echoes of her words faded. Each syllable seemed to hang in the air, a stinging reminder of her pent-up frustration. They were supposed to be a team, but today felt like the last straw. She wanted to scream even louder, but restrained herself, unsure how far she was willing to go. "Jess, I thought you were aware of the changes," Eric replied, his voice steady but his brow furrowed. He was still leaning casually against the reception desk, but his demeanor shifted. This was no longer a casual conversation, it was a confrontation. Jessica shot back, the words spilled out before she could catch them, driven by a rush of emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. "What do you want from me?" Eric countered, frustration bubbling beneath his calm exterior. The lobby grew eerily silent as neighboring conversations came to a halt, wide eyes glued to the unfolding drama. Jessica could feel the heat creeping up her neck, but the embarrassment only fueled her anger. "Maybe I wanted some teamwork." With that final exclamation, she turned on her heel and rushed toward the elevator, a whirlwind of anger and confusion swirling inside her. The doors slid closed behind her, isolating her from the scene she had just created. As the elevator descended, she took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart and reduce the knot in her stomach. Was she too harsh? The confrontation replayed in her mind like a bad movie. She felt blinded by irritation. Eric wasn't just a colleague, he was supposed to be a teammate. When she finally stepped out onto her floor, the distant sounds of chatter filled her ears, but she couldn't focus on anything but the whirlwind of emotions inside her. She walked to her desk, the weight of her actions dragging her down like an anchor. But then, as if fate had a sense of humor, she caught a glimpse through a glass conference room. There he was, Eric, standing confidently at the head of a long table. He was commanding the board meeting, his voice steady and powerful. Unbeknownst to him, Jessica felt a rush of conflicting emotions wash over her. The more she watched, the more her doubts fizzled into a blend of admiration and disbelief. This was not the reluctant coworker she had just yelled at. He was speaking with authority, discussing strategies that had everyone in the room captivated. She noticed the way he gestured as he spoke, how he commanded respect effortlessly. Her heart sank. How had she underestimated him so drastically? As he laid out his vision for the upcoming quarter, the board members leaned in closer to listen, nodding in agreement. Here was someone who could lead, inspire, and most importantly, make the tough decisions necessary for success. Jessica felt a wave of shame wash over her. Had she been so caught up in her frustrations that she couldn't see the strengths right in front of her? Once the meeting ended, she stood frozen at her desk. Eric turned to shake hands with the board members and exchanged nods with senior management. Thunderous applause echoed in her ears as Jessica's stomach twisted in knots. Feeling trapped in a whirlwind of regret, she decided to slip out of the office early. Her mind couldn't shake the image of Eric standing confidently in front of that room. The more she replayed it, the more she recognized her own flaws in that moment of anger. She had assumed he didn't care, but it was clear he cared about so much more than just numbers. Days passed, and Jessica found it impossible to let go of the confrontation. She avoided the break room where they used to bump into each other, sidestepping the tension that loomed in the air. Eric, on the other hand, seemed unfazed. He moved through the office with a renewed sense of purpose and momentum, building relationships and leading projects with ease. It made Jessica feel all the more inadequate, a weight pressing down on her. Why had she let her emotions get the best of her? The next week, her manager assigned them to work on a critical project together. Jessica's stomach dropped at the thought of collaborating with Eric again. How could they build on trust when the last time they'd been together had erupted into chaos? What if she was still angry, and what if he held a grudge? During their first meeting, they both walked into the small conference room. Tension simmered between them, palpable and thick. Jessica hesitated before breaking the ice. "Hey, Eric," she started, forcing herself to smile. "Yeah, I think we should," he replied, but his tone seemed just as cautious as hers, a mirror reflecting unspoken assumptions. They began reviewing the project requirements, trying to engage in normal back-and-forth dialogue. Slowly, something shifted. As words flowed, they found an unexpected harmony. Eric started laying out ideas, and Jessica found herself inspired by his confidence mixed with approachability. But just as quickly as good vibes began to bubble up, the memories of the lobby came crashing back. It was like a dark cloud hovering just outside their conversations, threatening to rain on their progress. "Listen," she began, her heart pounding. "About the other day, I really let my frustration get the best of me." Eric set down his pen, something resembling relief washing over his features. "I appreciate you saying that, and I should have communicated better." Jessica felt a weight begin to lift off her chest. "I just didn't feel supported." "I get that," he replied, looking her directly in the eye. "I've been there too." As they continued discussing the project, the heaviness began to lift. Each time they exchanged ideas, the energy in the room shifted towards something lighter, more collaborative. The unspoken tension slowly unraveled, revealing a shared commitment to success. Over the next few weeks, they began to find their rhythm, bouncing ideas off each other like seasoned teammates instead of adversaries. It was refreshing to see the growth they both experienced through their collaboration. One day, as they tackled a challenging problem, Jessica glanced up to see Eric grinning. "I think so too," she replied, smiling back. As they walked out of the conference room that day, a new mutual respect formed between them. Every brainstorming session felt electric, invigorating a true partnership. They developed not only their projects, but also their confidence in each other. One lunch break, Jessica dared to ask, "What are your long-term goals here, Eric?" He looked thoughtful for a moment, then replied, "I want to lead, create change, and hopefully inspire others to do the same." His honesty struck a chord. Jessica could see the passion he had for forging not just profits, but connections. He continued, "I want to make an impact too," she admitted. That air of vulnerability opened a gateway between them. The more they shared, the tighter their bond became, expanding beyond professional collaboration into genuine friendship. Eventually, the day arrived for their big presentation to senior management. Their team had worked tirelessly, and now they stood before the executives who held their future in the balance. Jessica's heart raced as she prepared to take the stage next to Eric, who looked unfazed, confidence seeping from every pore. As he spoke, laying out their ideas with clarity and purpose, Jessica felt a rush of pride. Here was the man she had once dismissed, now passionately advocating for their work. He was a leader, and together they felt unstoppable. When the presentation finished, the room erupted into applause. Jessica glanced at Eric, and the smile on his face told her everything. They had done it, not just as colleagues, but as a united front. Later, as they walked out of the boardroom side by side, the energy of accomplishment buzzed between them. "You were amazing up there," Jessica said, her voice glowing with admiration. Eric turned, a genuine smile lighting up his face. "We were amazing." As they stepped onto the elevator, the weight of their shared journey felt palpable. In this enclosed space, Jessica realized how much she had come to respect Eric not just as a colleague, but as a true partner. The tension from the lobby felt like history, a faint echo of their growth. After their success, Eric suggested an evening out to celebrate, excitement dancing in his eyes. "What do you say to dinner?" Jessica's heart fluttered. "I'd love that," she replied, feeling a jolt of anticipation. That evening, over plates of pasta in a charming restaurant, laughter flowed as they shared stories. The connection had shifted from mere collaboration to deep friendship, leaving them vulnerable, open to possibilities. "Who would have thought?" Right from yelling at each other to this, Jessica said, a playful smile on her lips. "Life is unpredictable," Eric replied, leaning in. With every laugh, every conversation, Jessica felt the walls she had built start to crumble. They were slowly unveiling the uncharted territory that lay between them. Eventually, as they continued talking, the electric connection pulsed through their words. Jessica realized that her resentment had transformed into something unexpected, a deeper bond with Eric that she had never known could exist. As the night wore on, they stepped outside together, the cool night air wrapping around them. The world felt full of potential, and something unspoken lingered just beneath the surface of their every word. "I'm glad we confronted each other," Eric said suddenly, the honesty in his tone striking a chord. "Me too," Jessica agreed, her voice softening. As they walked to their cars, a comfortable silence settled in. They both knew this was just the beginning. In the fading light, they stood side by side, ready for whatever might come next, confident in the knowledge that they had both transformed through the challenges they had faced together. In that moment, with the uncertainty of the road ahead glowing brightly, they realized that sometimes the storm builds bridges instead of burning them down. Jessica yelled, her voice slicing through the calm buzz of the lobby. Eric, leaning casually against the marble reception desk, looked up, taken aback as if she had just thrown cold water in his face. The usually vibrant atmosphere fell to a hush, the air thick with tension. Colleagues turned, their eyes darting between Eric and Jessica, a living audience to an unfolding drama. Eric replied, his casual tone evaporating. Confusion painted his face and panic flickered in his eyes. "Why would I know if you didn't tell me?" Her heart raced as she confronted him, every word tinged with frustration that had been building over weeks. The lobby felt like a stage, the spotlight glaring down on them both. Eric's relaxed posture stiffened, his arms crossing defensively. Jessica shook her head, disbelief fueling her anger. "Not that big a deal. You left me hanging to figure it out." At that moment, she felt a mix of empowerment and regret. The heat of her words hung in the air, mixing with her rising anxiety. Part of her wondered if she had gone too far, but the wave of frustration felt justified. He raised his voice, an edge of irritation lacing his tone. "You're overreacting." The floor seemed to swirl beneath her feet. This wasn't just a clash over work, it was revealing the cracks in their working relationship. She spun away, not wanting to hear more, and strode toward the elevators, each step echoing her inner turmoil. As the metal door slid shut, Jessica leaned back against them, her heart pounding wildly. She felt the sting of embarrassment creeping into her cheeks. Sure, moments like these happened, but right now felt like a churning storm. When she reached her floor, her mind was consumed by thoughts of Eric and the argument. She pulled up her emails and tried to focus, but her concentration slipped between her fingers like sand. What if she just ruined everything? Hours later, as dusk painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Jess decided to step out for some fresh air. Just before reaching the door, she noticed people gathering in the large boardroom across the hall. Curiosity pulled her in, and she peered through the glass. To her shock, there was Eric, confidently addressing the board members, a stark contrast to the flustered man she had just fought with. He was commanding attention, weaving a story out of numbers that came alive in his hands. With each word, the executives leaned in closer. Jessica felt her breath hitch. It hit her like a freight train. This was a side of Eric she had never seen, her chest filled with an uncomfortable mix of admiration and shame. How had she misjudged him so badly? In that moment, she realized that he wasn't just a colleague. He was a leader, someone who could inspire those around him. The meeting wrapped up and Jess took a step back, her heart heavy with regret. Each nod of approval from the board was another reminder of her earlier misfire. How could she have thought he didn't care? He was holding the future of their entire project, and she had only seen his failures. As she walked back to her desk, the weight of her actions settled like a storm cloud. Could she just move on? Would he let her? She felt the pressure of her own anxiety squeezing her chest. Days rolled by, the incident replayed like a broken record in her mind. She avoided the break room, not daring to face him again. After their confrontation, Eric moved through the office with a renewed sense of confidence, clearly unfazed. Each time she saw him, she was filled with guilt and something else, too. Despite her anger, a part of her was drawn to him, yearning for a connection that had been buried beneath their disagreement. With the deadline looming for their project, fate intervened. One afternoon, their manager announced that Jessica and Eric would be assigned to the same project team. Jessica's heart sank. How could they possibly work together after that explosive encounter? When they met in the conference room, the air crackled with unspoken tension. Eric entered, a hesitant smile on his face. "Hey, Jess." Her stomach twisted with uncertainty. Yeah, but internally she was screaming. She felt as if they were stuck on a seesaw teetering dangerously. As they delved into their project, things started off rocky. Each time Eric suggested an idea, Jessica held back, cautious of how her words might spark another firestorm. But with every meeting, she realized something extraordinary. The more they collaborated, the more she saw Eric not as an adversary, but as a partner. One afternoon, after a particularly challenging brainstorming session, she gathered her courage. "Eric, I want to apologize for how I handled things in the lobby that day." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "I appreciate that, Jess. I didn't handle it perfectly either." Suddenly, a sense of relief washed over her. It felt like a fog lifted, revealing new possibilities. "Let's just focus on doing our best for this project, okay?" "Agreed." "I think we have the potential to really pull this off," he replied, a hint of optimism creeping into his voice. As the weeks went by, they began to find common ground. They laughed, shared experiences, and completed the project with a synergy they never expected. Jessica learned to appreciate Eric's strengths, and in turn, he valued her attention to detail. Their working relationship gradually turned into a genuine friendship. Lunches became filled with laughter and camaraderie rather than just discussion of work. Jessica found herself looking forward to seeing him, her earlier anger fading like echoes in the wind. She joked one afternoon as they shared sandwiches. "Life is surprising like that," Eric mused, a smile lighting up his face. Just as she was starting to feel comfortable, the day of the big presentation arrived. Their team had poured countless hours into perfecting their work, and now it was time to showcase their efforts to the management team. Jess felt the butterflies dance in her stomach. Anxiety and excitement blended into a potent mix of anticipation. As they entered the boardroom together, she noticed Eric's demeanor had shifted. He stood tall, confident, almost electrifying. As he began speaking, Jessica watched him in awe. He moved with grace, weaving a story that captivated everyone in the room. Each slide he presented was a testament to their hard work. Their partnership had come full circle. When it was Jessica's turn, she felt buoyed by Eric's earlier performance. She added her own insights seamlessly, strengthening the presentation even further. Together, they were a force, impressing the executives and sparking conversations filled with excitement. When they finished, applause filled the air, and the management team beamed with approval. Jessica turned to Eric, a mixture of shock and joy reflected in her eyes. he exclaimed, the smile on his face infectious. As they left the boardroom, the mood was buoyant, a shared sense of accomplishment wrapping around them like a warm blanket. Let's celebrate, Eric said, his enthusiasm contagious. Over dinner that night, Jessica felt the walls around her heart crumbling away piece by piece. She shared stories and dreams she had tucked away, revealing a side of herself she hadn't shown anyone in a long time. With every word, she felt Eric leaning in, attentive, enthralled. I didn't expect us to turn out like this, she admitted, her tone slightly nostalgic. Maybe we needed that fight to uncover the truth between us, Eric said, his gaze steady. The conversation flowed easily, the earlier tension now replaced by understanding and camaraderie. As the evening drew to a close, Jessica felt a pull toward Eric, something deeper than friendship, something undeniably compelling. Standing outside their cars, the night sky twinkled above them like a curtain of stars. Jessica hesitated, unsure of how to voice what she felt. They shared a silent moment, the air thick with potential. Eric, she began, her heart racing. I really admire your ability to lead. He nodded, a hint of a smile forming on his lips, and I respect you. Just then in the glowing streetlight, Jessica caught a glimpse of his eyes, warm and inviting. The connection between them felt electric, the air crackling with unspoken words, shared experiences, and endless possibilities. His expression shifted, surprise painted across his features. I've been feeling that too. In that moment, everything felt aligned. The fight in the lobby had transformed into something profound, leading them to this newfound connection. As they stood there, they both knew this was not just about work anymore. I'm really glad you yelled at me that day, Jess laughed lightly, breaking the tension, feeling lighter as they both burst into laughter. Me too, Eric replied, his smile genuine. Walking to their cars, they left behind the echoes of their earlier frustrations and mistakes. Sometimes the storms we face end up guiding us to uncharted territories, and with a promise of exploration ahead, they stepped into a future filled with hope, friendship, and the prospect of something extraordinary. Jessica yelled, her voice cutting through the calm lobby like a knife. The air crackled with tension, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Eric, leaning against the reception desk, looked up, eyes wide with surprise and confusion. It was as if he'd just seen a lion leap from the shadows. The lobby buzzed with the usual activity, people rushing to and fro, but in that instant, they all froze. Colleagues turned to watch, their eyes glued to the unexpected scene unfolding in front of them. Eric shot back, his tone defensive as he shifted from relaxed to tense in an instant. Jessica replied, her heart racing as frustration and adrenaline surged through her veins. Eric's brows furrowed, gripping his coffee cup tightly. I was handling other things. Jessica's voice rose even more, surprising even herself. I'm standing here trying to explain our situation to clients while you're off doing whatever. The tension chimed with every word, harsh and palpable. She felt the stares of their coworkers bore into her, and for a moment she wished she could disappear. Eric's expression shifted from surprise to frustration to hurt, and in that moment she felt both powerful and small. He replied, his voice dropping to a cooler tone. You think this is just me not caring? Jessica stepped back, her chest heaving. The fight was escalating and she could feel the heat rising in her face. The anger that had built over weeks of miscommunications and unmet expectations spilled over. But did she really want to escalate things this far? Before she could think it through, she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the silence behind her. She slid into the elevator, the doors closing mercilessly on the scene she left behind. Inside the small metal box, she squeezed her eyes shut, her mind swirling with a mix of regret and fury. Had she crossed a line? Was it really that big of a deal? Her breath quickened. She wanted to scream, but felt embarrassed instead. Arriving at her floor, Jessica stepped out and headed to her desk, her heart still pounding. She had to pull herself together, but as she tried to focus on work, she kept replaying the argument in her head. What had happened in the lobby was just the tip of the iceberg. Months of feeling overwhelmed, stuck under mountains of work, and Eric's seemingly relaxed attitude had pushed her over the edge. He could be so careless, and now that carelessness had impacted her in a big way. Later, when the clock struck 6, she decided to grab a coffee to recharge. As she walked towards the break room, she paused as she heard laughter. Curiosity piqued, she strained to hear what was happening. When she peeked into the conference room, Jessica's heart dropped. There was Eric standing at the front, confidently leading a board meeting. He was commanding the room, gesturing emphatically, a calm certainty radiating from him. The same man she had just shouted at was now inspiring confidence in others. Shock coursed through her. How had she overlooked this side of him? As he spoke, the executives in attendance leaned in, hanging on his every word. He was laying out a comprehensive plan for expansion, and the board was clearly impressed. Jessica felt an uncomfortable mix of admiration and embarrassment swell within her. Watching him in full command made her realize how condescending she had been. Just days ago, she had labeled him as uncommitted, but now he was emerging as a leader. She watched him, captivated by his charisma, questioning everything she thought she knew. How could she see this man present ideas that sparked excitement in the room, and yet throw a fit at his apparent lack of communication? The more she thought about it, the more guilt washed over her. A few minutes later, the board meeting concluded and Jessica slipped back to her desk, trying to shake off the heavy feelings swirling inside her. The weight of her actions pressed down on her and she couldn't seem to find peace. As days passed, the memory of their confrontation lingered. She noticed Eric moving through the office with a new sense of confidence, leading projects and getting positive feedback from upper management. Each time she saw him, her stomach churned with guilt. She had misjudged him and it felt suffocating. Jessica had always prided herself on being perceptive, but she had missed the mark entirely. How could she have been so blind? She couldn't avoid him forever. Deep down, she wanted to resolve this. One day, Jess discovered they had been paired to work on a crucial project together. Panic surged through her. How were they supposed to collaborate after that explosive encounter? She felt trapped, like two mismatched puzzle pieces that didn't fit. Would they even be able to work together without it falling apart again? During their first meeting in the conference room, her stomach knotted. Eric entered with a semblance of confidence, but she could see it was laced with uncertainty. "Hey, Jess," he greeted, his tone cautious. "Yeah, I completely agree," she replied, forcing herself to respond. It was awkward, like putting on a mask to hide her true emotions. As they began their discussion, tension hung in the air like a thick fog. They exchanged ideas, but the earlier fight lingered over them like an unwelcome shadow. Jessica started, hesitating at the uncertain waters ahead. Eric paused, his brow furrowed as he gathered his thoughts. "I appreciate that. I should have communicated better as well. I didn't think you were in the dark." The tension seemed to dissipate just a bit as she met his eyes, and a hint of understanding began to blossom between them. "I know it shouldn't have escalated like that." He nodded slowly, a softness returning to his expression. From that moment on, something shifted. As they delved deeper into the project, they discovered points of synergy they never knew existed. Jessica found herself impressed by Eric's thoughtful insights, and he began to value her attention to detail. It was as if they were two sides of the same coin, both strong and capable but often overlooked in the chaos of daily life. Days turned into weeks, and the more they worked together, the thicker the bond grew. They began to share laughter in between discussions, exchanging jokes and ideas that flowed effortlessly. With every collaborative session, their history seemed to fade, replaced by a budding sense of respect. During one lunch break, they sat at a cozy cafe nearby, the clatter of dishes and chatter surrounding them. "You know, I've been thinking," Eric began, his gaze focused on her. "Finding this common ground has been refreshing." Jessica smiled, feeling the weight of their difficult past lift a little. "I didn't expect this relationship to change. I thought we were simply just buzzing past each other, drowning in stress. But now," he leaned back, wearing a content smile. "It's amazing, isn't it? Just when they started feeling comfortable in their new partnership, the day of the project presentation arrived." Jessica's heart raced as they gathered their notes and slid into the boardroom, the atmosphere buzzing with a mix of excitement and apprehension. As Eric began to present, Jessica felt pride swell in her chest. He spoke confidently, outlining their strategy with infectious enthusiasm. Each slide revealed the depth of their work, and as he glanced over at her, she could see that spark of commitment in his eyes. When it was her turn to speak, she felt buoyed by their earlier conversations. She highlighted critical areas of the project, her voice steady. With every moment, she felt more and more like a partner rather than a solitary contributor. Finally, they wrapped up their presentation, applause erupting around the room. Jessica turned to Eric, her chest tight with disbelief and joy. He beamed, his face radiating excitement. In that shared moment of triumph, everything shifted again, not just the tension or misunderstandings, but something deeper. As they left that boardroom, the jubilant atmosphere transformed their working relationship. They felt like a dynamic duo. That evening, Eric suggested dinner to celebrate their success. "We've worked hard for this moment," he said, his enthusiasm shining through. "I'd love that," Jessica replied, her heart fluttering at the thought of spending more time with him outside of work. As they sat across from each other at a charming restaurant, laughter flowed like a warm river between them. They shared stories, dreams, and their experiences, each layer revealing a deeper connection. "You know," Jessica started, her voice softening, "I originally thought you didn't care about our work, but it turns out I misjudged you." He leaned in, sincerity radiating from him. "I appreciate that, Jess. Honestly, that moment in the lobby pushed us both into a space where we could reevaluate our roles. Each shared experience brought them closer, the laughter brightening the atmosphere around them." As they finished their dinner, Jessica felt a warmth blooming inside her, a connection that felt both natural and exciting. Standing outside afterward, the stars twinkled above them, illuminating the possibilities ahead. Jessica could sense an electric tension, the weight of what lay beneath their friendship shimmering in the air. "Eric," she began, hesitating, "I really admire how you handled everything." "Thank you, Jess. That means a lot coming from you," he replied, the sincerity in his eyes deepening. The atmosphere shifted yet again, the air thick with a sense of revelation. They stood under the twinkling lights, the background noise of the world fading away. Feeling the pull of connection, Jessica found herself wanting to take a step forward, to dive deeper into the bond they had formed amidst their earlier fight. His warm gaze met hers, surprise flashing across his face, followed by a soft smile. I felt that too. Their eyes locked, and for a split second, everything felt right. The storm they once endured hadn't just been a learning experience, it had been a catalyst for deepening their connection, something neither of them anticipated. Jessica's heart raced as she took a breath, feeling the excitement of this new possibility flooding in. I'm really grateful for everything that happened. They do, Eric agreed, his smile growing. With a newfound sense of hope and possibility, they left behind the remnants of their earlier conflict. What had begun as a storm of frustration transformed into a budding connection, and they were ready to embrace a future where they could navigate challenges together, this time as true allies. Hand in hand, they stepped into the unknown, eager to explore the adventure that lay ahead. Sometimes it took a spark of confrontation to ignite the flame of understanding, leading them down a path they had never expected but were now wholly embracing. Jessica's voice shattered the quiet in the lobby, sharp and filled with raw frustration. The air grew tense, as if the entire building was holding its breath. Eric, standing casually with a coffee cup in hand, looked up, eyes wide and confused, as if she'd just thrown a bolt of lightning at him. The reception area, usually bustling with energy, suddenly felt suffocating. Colleagues around them froze, their conversations evaporating into whispers, captivated by the escalating drama unfolding in front of them. He exclaimed, visibly taken aback. Jessica shot back, feeling the heat of anger rising in her cheeks. A hush fell over the lobby, her words lingering in the air like smoke. Eric's expression morphed from surprise to hurt, and Jessica felt a pang of guilt. Was she crossing a line? But in that moment, her mounting frustrations drowned out reason. She continued, her voice trembling slightly now. He opened his mouth, about to reply, but the intensity of her gaze silenced him. The tension crackled between them, thick enough to cut. She realized that this wasn't just about work anymore. It was about trust, commitment, and respect, something that felt sorely lacking. With a last glare, Jessica turned and marched toward the elevator, her heart pounding with a blend of anger and regret. As the steel door slid shut, shutting out the world, she leaned back against the cold metal, taking deep breaths. Why had she let it get this far? The strain of deadlines, the pressure of expectations, and Eric's lackadaisical attitude had piled on until she had exploded. But now, in the silence of the elevator, she felt the echoes of her anger fading. Reaching her floor, she stepped out, trying to shake off the confrontation and plunge back into work. But no matter how hard she tried, her mind drifted back to Eric. She couldn't ignore it. He had been her teammate through difficult projects, and now all she felt was bitter disappointment. The day dragged on, every email buzzed with familiar urgency. When the clock finally struck 6, Jessica thought desperately of escape, just wanting to be anywhere but here. But as she glanced down the hall, she saw a gathering in the boardroom. Curiosity pulled her in. Peeking through the glass doors, her breath caught in her throat. There he was, Eric, standing confidently at the head of the conference table, the very same man she just yelled at moments ago. He commanded the room, speaking with a clarity and passion that took her by surprise. Despite the recent budget cuts, I believe we can pivot and still deliver innovative results, he said, his voice steady and authoritative. The board members leaned forward, nodding, clearly engaged in what he was presenting. Jessica's heart sank, admiration washed over her, mixing with the weight of her embarrassment. How could she have only seen the careless side of him? Here he was, a leader, inspiring others with his insights. It was as if someone had pulled a curtain back and she was finally seeing the performance behind the facade. As the meeting concluded, applause filled the room and Jessica turned away, feeling the heat of her own regret. Her emotions churned. The Eric standing before the board was not the one she had misjudged in the lobby. In realizing her mistake, she felt a sudden urge to make things right. The next few days moved sluggishly, each moment weighted with unease. They had received mixed reviews on their project, but Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that the tension between them was keeping their team from achieving full potential. Walking into the break room, she hesitated as she spotted Eric at the coffee machine. For a moment she was frozen, uncertain of how to approach him. Would he even want to talk after their confrontation? "Hey," she said cautiously, stepping in. "Hey," he replied, glancing up, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "I wanted to talk about the other day," Jessica began, her voice steady as she took a deep breath. "I know I reacted poorly in the lobby." Eric paused, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "I appreciate that. I could have communicated better as well." His response was thoughtful, and it eased some anxiety gripping her chest. "Can we wipe the slate clean?" For the first time in days, a smile crept onto his face. "Absolutely." With a renewed sense of collaboration, they dove headfirst into brainstorming sessions, exchanging ideas with genuine enthusiasm. The previous conflict started to fade as they uncovered a dynamic that felt both refreshing and productive. Weeks passed. As their working relationship deepened, Jessica found herself excited about their project for the first time. The chemistry between them blossomed, evident not only in their work but in their shared laughter during lunch breaks. One afternoon, as they traded ideas, Eric grinned. "You know, I never expected us to turn around after that argument." Jessica replied, feeling the warmth of companionship bloom. Their camaraderie deepened, a foundation solidified through mutual respect and support. The bond they formed began to feel like a partnership, and with it came a sense of possibility. Finally, the day of their big presentation arrived. The stakes couldn't have been higher. As they walked into the boardroom, apprehension slipped into excitement. Jessica could feel Eric's presence next to her, an anchor in the storm. He started off the presentation, speaking confidently as he outlined their strategy. Jessica watched, entranced by how he commanded the room, pulling everyone in with his vivid explanations and unwavering belief in their project. When it was her turn, she felt a rush of adrenaline. Standing beside him, she spoke freely, adding her insights seamlessly. The room was captivated, and for the first time she felt like she truly belonged. When they finished, applause erupted. The executives voiced their approval, smiles breaking across their faces. Jessica turned to Eric, a mix of joy and disbelief flooding her system. His smile was radiant. "We nailed it. It's a team effort, Jess." In that moment, everything felt different. They weren't just colleagues, they were a team. They had embraced their challenges and turned them into something incredible. "Yes, I would love that," Jessica beamed, her heart fluttering at the thought. That evening, they found themselves at a cozy little restaurant, laughter and warmth enveloping them as they shared stories and dreams. Each moment deepened their connection, and the boundaries they once had blurred, revealing a new, exciting possibility. Who could have imagined this? From yelling at each other to this wonderful dinner, she mused, sipping her wine, a playful smile on her face. "Life has a funny way of working things out," Eric replied, his gaze warm and inviting. As their conversation flowed, they explored each other's aspirations, delving into the depths of who they were beyond work. The chemistry between them sparked, igniting an ember of something more profound. His expression shifted, surprise folding into a brilliant smile. "I was hoping you'd say that." With the weight lifted, they couldn't help but lean into this new territory. The evening unfolded with ease, laughter shared over a delightful meal, and with each moment the connection deepened. But just as they began to explore the potential fruits of their budding relationship, Jessica's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced down, her heart dropping as she read the urgent message from her manager. "There's been a significant change in the project direction," it read. Panic coursed through her veins as she looked up at Eric, whose expression reflected a sudden seriousness. The atmosphere shifted again, as if a dark cloud had rolled in, casting a shadow over their joyful evening. "We were finally getting close to something real," Jessica said, her voice barely above a whisper, frustration seeping through. Eric leaned in, concern evident in his eyes. "We'll figure it out, but whatever happens, we can face it together." In that moment, she understood the stakes had just been raised. As they stepped out into the cool night, the uncertainty loomed larger than before, leaving Jessica questioning not just their project, but the very foundation they had begun to lay with one another. The night felt heavy with anticipation, and she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change.